We're in the middle of a series entitled The Art of Community, and this morning's topic is the art of neighboring. Our key scripture that we've been reading and thinking on this week is the parable of the Good Samaritan. And I'm just going to read that quickly here to you. A man learned in the law asked Jesus, trying to outsmart him, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm in here." Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. The man replied, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said, "Yes, now go do the same." And as I was thinking on this topic this last week, I couldn't help but think about how many stories throughout Scripture, how many stories throughout the New Testament that we hear of and we know that Jesus constantly is reaching out to people. That's who Jesus is. Jesus is the ultimate example, obviously, of being a neighbor to all kinds of people. And that's just who Jesus was. That's just what Jesus did. He heard people, he saw people, he healed people, and that's who he still is today. Who is my neighbor? That's the question, right? Growing up in Pittsburgh, I lived there when I was young, and when you live there when you're young, there's one person that you hear about all the time who's really important to your school and to your community, and that's Mr. Rogers. And he was, I would say, almost a modern-day prophet among us who taught us how to be a neighbor. I can't think of a better example in our time. Right. And this morning, I have the honor of introducing to you Christi Engels, who was on Mr. Rogers' show as a recurring character as a child and reappeared on the show later as an older teenager. She knew Mr. Rogers for many years, and I just want to thank you so much for being willing to share your story with us here this morning, Christi. It means a lot to me.
Thank you for inviting me. I don't think I ever really realized that it would ever be. I always knew it was just a fun piece of my life, but I didn't know that it could be something that, in my mind I connected it because he was a Christian and, he lived it. He was a great role model to me and to my sisters and a lot of people growing up, but I don't think I ever really saw it as a part that God would use in me, and I'm thankful that he is, and hope that my words honor him today, and whatever and that God says to you whatever you need to hear today.
Yeah, thank you. So, I want to get into the questions. Up there you see a picture of Christi with...
I have no idea what that expression on my face was supposed to mean.
It's cute. So who are they? Explain who your character was and how old you were. Mark kind of started to explain.
This was Mr. and Mrs. McFeely. He was the mailman on Mr. Rogers. He went around on his little bike, and but they were my grandparents. And I thought they were really married, by the way. Little did I know. But yeah, I made lunch for him. I did, sang with him, made him art crafts, and they came to my real house and yeah, just had a lot of fun being his granddaughter.
That's so cool. May I read to you? You didn't know. I gave her a few questions ahead of time. She doesn't know this one.
Love when they do this to me.
May I read to you something that Andy helped me find last night?
Oh, Lord. Go.
Okay. A writer over at storytiming.com had this to say about you. Okay? Mr. Rogers brought wonderful people from the real world into the neighborhood so that he could introduce them to us, his television neighbors. Occasionally, a special guest would return for multiple visits. This would deepen the experience by adding old memories to new experiences, just like friends do in real life. Some of these repeat appearances, cellist Yo-Yo Ma, gymnast Cheney Humphrey occurred several years apart, but this author says, one of my favorite neighborhood visitors isn't famous or flashy. She's a little girl named Chrissy Thompson. Chrissy was cast as Mr. and Mrs. McFeely's granddaughter when she was 6 years old and returned many times as she grew into a self-assured young lady. And he goes on to talk about the episode where you came on when you were a teenager and about how much that meant to all the watchers. So that was written in 2016, by the way. So these are people attaching to your story now.
No, many years. Mm-hmm.
Does that surprise you?
I don't think I ever, when I was on the show, for me, of course, all elementary age kids are really all about themselves. And so I never knew of the ripple effect and the far-reaching. There were times when I would be at a camp way up north in Wisconsin that, you'd think nobody and somebody I had this one person just watching me all weekend, but not saying anything to me, and I was creepy, But then they came up and they're like, I finally figured it out, and I'm like, why didn't you just ask me? I probably could, saved you a whole bunch of time of figuring out where you knew me from, So, but I appreciate knowing that God uses it for more than just, you were cute and, now you're funny and whatever, but, or not funny according to my 13-year-old, but, that's cool.
I love that. Okay. What do you think made your experience as a recurring character on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood so impactful in your life, especially at that time in your life, at that juncture of your life?
Okay. I'm probably going to read some of my
okay.
notes just because, but I know for a big part it was because when I was born, they didn't expect me to survive. And so when I finally was, but I wasn't taught how to dream and imagine and make long-term goals and do all of that because my parents did not think I was going to live that long. And so for me, it was finally a purpose. I have a purpose in life. And I knew then that what I did know was that it was on tape and that it was going to be something that would live on even past me. And I think that was my biggest thing was even as a 7-year-old, I knew that it was on tape and it was going to be outlive me maybe.
Wow. As I watched the episodes with you in them now, I noticed several things. One of those is that Mr. Rogers wasn't afraid to talk to you about the braces on your legs or to ask you how you felt about them. Can you please speak into that for a moment? Did you have many people ask you?
No, number one, I was in the hospital a lot, so I wasn't around. And back then it was pretty hush-hush to talk about all of those kinds of things, your disability. And one of the things I really appreciated about Mr. Rogers was the fact that it taught me how to talk to other kids about it and to allow them. Parents would, the kids would come up and want to play with my crutches, or, of course, they all turn them into guns immediately, but that's another story. But, and so they would, but I would be okay with saying, no, it's okay to ask questions, because that's what enables people not to be afraid. And that's what he really showed me, is that, as much as he chooses his words carefully, and they have purpose behind them. He doesn't just say, I love you, or, I'm proud of you, or use those terms loosely. He doesn't use the word neighbor loosely. He means it when he says these things. And so, it taught me, when I say, you can call me anytime, this is a hidden message, by the way, you too. You can. There's purpose behind what I say.
I know that about you. That's true. And I know that you mean that. Andy, could you please put up the next slide? Okay. So this is Mr. Rogers' proposal, a copy of his proposal to PBS. Do you want to speak about that for a moment?
A little bit. I was only 7, like I said. I don't know a lot of the politics behind all this, but this was his proposal. I am, I can, I will. And it wasn't to just, it was to all kids, and especially kids with disabilities, and introducing disabled kids to quote-unquote normal classrooms, normal settings, bringing them out and engaging them in churches and in schools and social settings, and and that was a fairly new thing back then. And so he wanted, like I said, other kids to be understanding of it, and as well as other adults, of how to talk about it and how to address it, and that we all are, in that we can and we will find a way. I will find a way.
Yes. Okay, so I talked about that. I noticed a couple of things when I watched the episodes with you in them. One of the other things that I noticed was that he patiently gave you space and time as a 7-year-old to answer his questions. He was not afraid of that awkward pause, that awkward silence, even on national television. He understood that it was going to take a moment for your child brain to process his questions. And that's hard for me even now. I mean, even just at home when no one else is around and I ask my kid a question, I'm like, did you hear me? But let alone in a space where all cameras and all eyes are on you, to have that pause, that silence, and to be okay with it. In fact, to realize maybe that that's the point of it.
Right. We're all uncomfortable with silence, and even I notice, you have the TV on for background noise, or you have the, all of these things on all the time, and we're, we go and check on our kids as soon as they're quiet. We don't think that they're up to something good, at all when they're finally quiet. So, but yes, he was very much that one that was just there in the moment. Let you, I wasn't one that could, partly because I was a pastor's child, you didn't have feelings back then. This was, you had them, but you had to keep them in check and quiet. And so it was something for him to ask me how I felt and then to let me think about it and be okay with the answer, because it was you and it was the way, that was your truth.
Oh, that's so remarkable to me. I want to get there someday, that I can be talking to someone, anyone, my neighbor, and just hear what's coming out of their mouth and really hear it and really
There's a big
be okay
difference
with,
between listening and hearing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So as I watch you with your daughter, Caitlin, who is very precious to me too, and I see just what kind of a mom you are, you give her that time and space, and you do that so well. And your daughter is the same age as my older daughter.
About that. I don't always think that way, believe me.
Do you think that your time with him and the way that he treated you informed your decision to go into the career that you did, early childhood development?
Yes. I don't know, it was not like we ever really had discussions about it. It wasn't like, I think behind the scenes, off camera, we, both my grandma, her name was Betsy, and Mr. Rogers did have talks about these things, and he really felt like it wasn't a career, it was more of a mission. That was his mission field. And I came to I always loved little kids and really wanted to make sure, because I knew how I felt as a little kid, and I wanted to make sure no kid ever felt like this. And so I knew I wanted to do what I could to change that around for whatever child was in my path. And so that was not my career, it was my mission field. They were my neighbors, and their parents were my neighbors. I wasn't doing just child care, I was doing family care, because it's the whole family. When that child comes in that morning, it's whatever happened that morning is influencing all of that, the mom and everybody.
Yeah, that's good. Andy and I have really seen over the last 4 years, as we've had a chance to be friends, that you love helping people. My mom was even saying that about you this morning. That you actually go out of your way for the needs of others, and that serving really brings you joy. What has inspired you to live that way?
Partly because it gets me out of the isolation that is really easy for us to crawl back into when we're feeling like, because I was so taught not to talk and not to, unbeknownst to anybody who knows me here. And so it gets you realizing everybody has a story, everybody has hurts, and everybody wants to be heard. Yeah. And you have to be heard in order to start to heal. And that's what Mr. Rogers did. He heard people, and he allowed that to start healing. Yeah. And so when I was with him, he would always find ways for me to help. And I think he just knew I wanted that. And it was that he was fostering that in me and finding that gift and using it and showing me that it's good to use those gifts and that we all have them. Yeah.
So kind of along, I don't know if it's along those lines, but, I'm looking at the characters here from the show. We have what Lady Elaine Fairchild and
Nobody likes Lady Elaine. What's up with
scared
that?
me a little. The different characters, his different neighbors. Was that intentional with him? What I mean, I think everything was intentional, but were they supposed to represent maybe the different types of neighbors that we would come in
Right,
contact?
yes, I think so.
Some of them weren't
because-
always pleasant.
Yep, there's the ones that are in charge, like King Friday, and there's the ones that are a little, intimidating, like Lady Elaine, and there's, and you don't want to really let them have a say, and you don't really want to, but they're going to let you know their opinion. And then, and there's the really cute ones that you want to spend all your time with, like, Henrietta Pussycat, and Daniel Striped Tiger was always my favorite. But, sorry, I ignored that. Axe the owl, sorry. But you didn't hear that. Yeah, he did all the voices. For those of you, probably a lot of you know, he did all the voices for all of the characters. And yes, I think he probably had people in mind that he was fashioning them after, but we'll never tell.
Yeah. Okay, so I love this question for you because I love hearing what you have to say about it. What was one thing Mr. Rogers used to say to you specifically that you'll always remember, and why?
So it was one that really probably still is very hard to hear and admit that you want to hear it, but I'm proud of you. I didn't have anybody that would say that to me outside of my grandma, who I saw very rarely, and him. And when he would say it, you knew that he meant it, regardless of whether you had made a mistake in the program. He intentionally kept one, I think it was intentionally, kept one of the mistakes that I made in one of the clips of the program. I was making lunch, and I was making lunch for Grandpa to pick up on his lunch break, and we were talking about how it was just almost time for lunch, and we didn't memorize scripts a lot. We just had conversations mostly. And I was talking about how it's almost time for lunch, and under my breath, if you listen really careful, you can hear me go, "For real." Like it's just hungry. All like, I'm hungry, guys. These lights are hot. I'm done, and I want to eat. And
he kept that in there.
And I can still remember him that day after all the taping going, "I'm proud of you." Aww. And I'm going, "Really?" Aww. And never really believing it, but always hearing it, no matter what I did. He always was proud of you, and you knew he always would be proud of you, no matter what you did.
Oh, I love that. Well, you just answered number 7, so that's great.
Oh.
All right, last 2 here. What does it mean to be a neighbor?
Boy, how did I answer this last time? Let's see. Yeah, your neighbor is who God puts in your path that day. Your neighbor is who, the person who checks you out the store. Sometimes we, don't stop and really think about the, how are you question. Do we really want to know the answer? But our neighbor is who God puts in your path that day. I remember Mr. Rogers did make a quote here If only we could start to sense each day how important you are to the lives of those you meet. There's something of yourselves that you can leave at every meeting with every person. And might I add, no matter what age. We can learn from younger people, we can learn from older people. Yeah.
Good answer. I like that. Okay. Andy, can you just... Oh, you already did. Never mind. He's ahead of me. So that was Christy when she was older, after she graduated from high school. You came back, and that was a really special episode, I think.
That they were doing trying to remember what the theme was there. But, same versus different. But it was, so how we all have different needs, but yet we're all the same, and different feelings, but we all feel the same, It's different circumstances, but we can all understand how each other feels. And that was, yes, my Krissy Returns type of show. And he gave me a butterfly necklace that day for my graduation. And, yeah, that was fun.
Okay, last one. Where is Mr. Rogers' neighborhood?
Well, we're here. We're here. And I'm glad I can carry it on and bring it here. And it's wherever you are. Like I said, it's with whoever God wants. It's one of my favorite quotes that we were looking at, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it in front of me, but, it's God is honored not just when you cross an ocean, it's when you cross the street. And so it's whoever's there.
Amen. I love that. Thank you. So we have one clip, and I just want, as you watch it with me, turn that page here. I want you to notice with me the pauses, the uncomfortable silences, the patience in his face toward Krissy, the way he asks her questions and really waits to hear her answer. He asks her how she feels. Being a neighbor means reaching out, seeing, hearing, healing. So just think about those things as we watch this short clip, please.
Hey, that looks like Chrissy Thompson over there. It is. Hey, Chrissy, come on over a minute. Chrissy, I was glad to see you here. Come for a little visit, will you?
Okay.
I was just shining my shoes.
Oh.
Can I give you a boost here? Fine. Want to help me finish? All it needs is a little bit of shine with that rag.
Okay. There.
How about yours? Think we could work on yours a bit?
Okay. Is there any white? Oh, there's some.
Yep.
There.
You know how to use that kind?
Yeah. We had some at home.
Oh, good.
Just shake
Let's
it
just
a
put
bit.
it on. Do you have to take the straps off or
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah.
Chrissy, can you get into those shoes yourself?
Yeah.
You can?
Yep.
Well, I noticed that you work the strap and everything very well.
Yeah. That's right. Shoe cream.
How do you feel about your white shoes and your braces?
Well,
How do you think most children feel who have
see,
them?
there's this girl that I heard about once, and she didn't like her braces and crutches because they had caused her all these problems. And so
What kinds of problems, Chrissy?
like having trouble with her legs and stuff. But she always watched your show, and she was mad at him. So she said that she was she said that she wouldn't wear them anymore, so she put them back in the attic. So that
She put her braces and crutches in the attic.
and then she said that her mother would have to carry her because she wasn't going to walk anymore. And one time she was watching, and she saw me. She noticed that I wore them, and then she said to her mother, if that girl on television can walk as good as that, she went up to the attic crawling, and she got out her braces and crutches, and then she told her mother that she was going to walk again, and then she put her braces on, and she started running.
And your television visit helped in that way. Boy, does that make you proud? I guess so.
Okay. One last statement, and this part I'm going to cry. I know that you had a tough childhood, Christy. And I'm so grateful that he threw you a rope when he did, that he became a lifeline for you. And thank you for being that for so many people here. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking this time to do this. I know you rearranged your schedule to be here, so thank you for that.
I'm glad God gave me the opportunity and that I survived to do it.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm glad that if I can. Thank you.
Thank you.